Hi everyone, Niall here. Welcome back to the 8020 BIM channel. Today we're going to talk about view ranges in Revit. Specifically, I want to focus on the major things users actually need to know. My aim is to demystify some of the things that users tend to get confused about regarding view ranges in Revit and how they affect both standard plans and reflected plans such as ceilings plans and services plans respectively. Finally, I want to cover some additional workflow things that might improve your efficiency as you roll out your view ranges across your Revit project. As ever, if you find this content useful, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell icon, do all that good stuff. It helps the channel out because it tells YouTube that you find the information valuable. And if you are already familiar with any part of the process, I've included timestamps in the description below so you can just check them out and skip to the next part. I won't delay you any further, let's get into it. Step 1. Understanding view range settings in Revit. So, looking at the image in front of you here, I'm going to describe the various conditions of the settings within the view range dialog so that you can understand how they operate across the project. And then what we'll do after step 1 is we're going to step 2 and 3, where we'll roll out the view range settings and see the effect on the plan views once we've kind of discovered what each of these elements mean. So, looking at the image below, I'm going to talk about each of these individually. And I'm going to start with the overall view range. So the way to think about the overall view range is quite self-explanatory really. The overall view range extends from the top of the view, the top clip plane, all the way down to the bottom offset value. Elements present differently as they cross different dividers through it, but this is essentially the full depth of your view. Your eye is placed at the top clip plane and it extends all the way down to the offset from bottom value. Looking at the primary range, this is a little bit more confusing to be honest with you, and the way to think about this is that it's essentially a view that extends from the top clip plane down to the bottom clip plane, where the majority of the elements that fall within this range present with kind of default projection line styles, cut line styles, line weights and that kind of thing. There are one or two exceptions we'll go into, but the way to think about it is any element that falls between the top of view and the bottom clip plane will present normally, and that makes it the primary view range. Okay. Number 3, the view depth. Elements that are within the view depth, basically going from the bottom clip plane to the offset value from the bottom, have a different presentation than the primary range, let's say. Okay, and the way they'll present is they will present as the beyond line style, if I'm correct. Yes, it is the beyond line style. So when you go into your Revit default line styles, manage additional settings, line styles, you will see that you have this beyond value here. Okay, and whatever way your project beyond line style is created, elements that fall within this range here are going to automatically present with that beyond line style, and they'll lose their default projection and cut line styles. The only exceptions to this are floors, ramps, foundations and stairs. They will present with their default projection and cut line styles even in this view depth here until the point that this extends beyond about 1200 mil. I think it's 1220 millimeters or 4 feet. Once you go beyond that, then it will take on the beyond line style, but they kind of have a different default property where they'll present as normal because they're typically below the view range anyway, and therefore you may want them to show with their standard, their default projection and cut lines accordingly. But after the 1220 mil or the 4 feet value, they convert themselves into the beyond line style as well. I appreciate that can be a little bit confusing, but when you understand the function of the objects, you realize why they don't follow the same rule basically as all the other elements between the view depth. Number 4, the top of view. Okay, so elements that are within, sometimes referred to as the top clip plane, I was meant to say. Your view's eyes, as you can see from my crudely drawn eyeball here, are placed here. So when you assign this value, you're basically sending your eye level up to this point to look down as the arrow is depicting. Okay. The only elements that show up visible between the top clip plane and the cut plane are casework, windows, and generic model categories, which are given the default projection and cut lines accordingly. Nothing else will be visible in this zone though. So the reality is that your primary view range, although it goes up to the top of the view, most objects are only going to be visible that cross or are below the cut plane. And it's only those exceptions, the casework, the windows, and the generic model categories, that are visible within this zone here between the top of view clip plane and the cut plane. So number 5, the cut plane. Everything will be visible from the cut plane down to the bottom clip. Okay, so from here down to here, hence the green zone, everything will be visible. Anything that intersects with the cut plane will take on the cut line weight default presentation for the element category. So your window, for example, once it crosses this boundary, will take on its default cut line value. Anything within this range that doesn't cut the plane takes on the default projection line weights and styles from the element category. Note that if the element does not have a default line weight, Revit will apply a standard projection line weight as the element is not deemed cuttable. So if the element crosses the cut plane here and it does not as a default have a cut presentation line style, it will take on the default projection line style instead. Basically, some families are non-cuttable, so the cut plane will still only present as if it's at top of the element, much the same as the window here. Okay, so number 5, the cut plane. There's a little bit of detail around how that works, but I'll go into that a bit more detail on that when we're going through this sample. Finally, the bottom clip plane. The elements that fall between the bottom clip plane and the cut plane present the default projection line weights of the family category, as I've already depicted by the green zone there. And finally, the offset from the bottom. This informs the position of total view depth. Refer to point 4, basically the discussion I had about the elements having, point 3, elements having the beyond line style when they fall within this view depth. So really the offset from bottom value is only to derive this depth from, and that's it. Okay, there's no other special kind of condition that this gives. It just dictates the view depth. So now that we've ran through each of the criteria that dictate the settings for the view ranges in Revit, we're going to go through a couple of workout samples now, and we'll see how they affect standard plans. So, step 2, setting up view ranges for standard plans in Revit. So, as you can see on the left hand side, I have kept the example section with all of the various view range properties kind of drafted in for reference, okay? And on the right hand side, we have a standard kind of plan call out of kind of the bathroom arrangement for the building. And what I want to do is I want to edit the view range to change the presentation of elements within this, okay? And we're going to use this as a reference so we can understand the nature of the changes. So the first thing I want to show you is that in our sample here, I actually have the cut plane set 1500mm above the bottom. Okay, so the bottom clip is flat to level 2. So our bottom doesn't have an offset value from level 2. It's associated directly on our level 2. And we have 1500mm to the top of this kind of rudimentary presentation of our cut plane. Okay, so I want to try emulate this scenario that I've used detailed lines in the section in the plan using the view range. So going into the plan, on the left hand side under the properties, if you go down to extents, view range, you go to edit, okay? And in the view range here, you can see the various elements. So the first thing I'm going to show you is that the top here depicts the top of view or the top clip plane. So that is associated to level 2, as we can see down here, and it's given an offset value of 2300. Now we know in our diagram that we drafted that we actually want this at 2500. So I'm going to set that at 2500mm. Secondly, the cut plane, as I said already, we want to show that at 1500, but currently it's shown only at 1200. So I'm going to change that value to 1500. Again, our bottom is associated directly to level 2, so you can see, and it sits on level 2. And then our view depth, which gives kind of the offset from the bottom value. Okay, so this is our view depth here. This can be set to level below, unlimited if we wish, or we can keep the association to the level 2. And in this case, we're going to emulate what I have here, which I believe is minus 750 millimeters. Okay. So a few things I want you to note. I want you to look at the window here. The window here is going to disappear because, as you can see in section, once we take it from 1200 up to 1500, what we'll actually see in the cut plane is the wall and not cutting through the window. Okay. Secondly, I want you to look down here. This is actually a full height glazing unit that goes a little bit beyond the underside of the level 2. And when I set the view depth to minus 750, you're actually going to see the framework for the bottom mullion just here come into play. Okay, so press and apply. Note the changes as I'd said. Note how the mullion has been placed because it's slightly below the level 2, and the minus offset is given a view depth that's going to catch that. And finally, note how the window basically is only barely visible where it protrudes the wall, and what we're actually seeing is the cut plane through the wall. Okay, so pressing OK, we've now changed the presentation of the elements in our plan by dictating a new top of view, cut plane, and our offset value from the bottom. Just to note how this works, just kind of from a more intuitive or a visual presentation rather than going through the value settings. If I was to select the window here and move it up into the cut plane to intersect the cut plane, note how it appears as a cut within the section, within the plan, apologies. And again, I can set it back down. And again, you're getting the wall because it's intersecting the cut plane. So that's how the cut plane works. It literally takes a slice across the room. So your eye is above it, and then your start point for the majority of your presentable items slices. Okay. Similarly, you'll note that our door has cut presentation, but if our cut plane value was to go, again, going into our edit view range, if we were to set that to 2400, note how our doors disappear off our plan because now we are cutting above our door head height. So I'm going to set that back down to 1500 and press apply and press OK. So that is how to use the view range settings to change the presentation of items within a standard plan view. Step 3. Understanding and setting up a view range for reflected ceiling plans in Revit. So as you can see on the left hand side here, our diagrammatic section has changed a bit when it comes to the reflected ceiling plan. And the way to think of the reflected ceiling plan is it's essentially a mirroring of the properties with a few little differences. So as you can see in the reflected ceiling plan, the bottom and the cut plane are essentially the same thing. Your eye rests on the underside of the cut plane, and then it travels up the depth of the cut plane until it reaches the top of the view, and then there's a view depth applied to the top of the view afterwards. Okay, so let's have a look and see how this actually plays when you're using the reflected ceiling plan here. Okay, so on the right hand side we have the reflected ceiling plan, and I'm going to go into our view range, and as you can see, our bottom is grayed out and our cut plane is grayed out. Okay, we cannot change the associated level. Basically, we have picked a reflected ceiling plan view here that is derived from level 2, and therefore our cut plane and our bottom plane are assigned to level 2 and level 2 only. There's no way to edit that. Okay, our top can go to unlimited, so we can set our top of view to just continue to extend and extend and extend and extend indefinitely, or we can set it to level above, as I have here, which is basically the ease level on the roof, or we can associate it to level 2 down here and give it an offset value vertically. Okay, so in this instance we're going to leave it level above. We're going to set the offset for that as 0, just to hit that level there. And you can see we have a view depth here. And the view depth actually sticks to the top side of the top of view. And what that will do is much the same as the primary range here, where we can tell it to be unlimited. We can tell our view depth after the top of view to be unlimited as well. Remembering that our view depth presents things differently. As a default, it presents things as beyond. So what you want to do is you want to create your top of view at the exact level you want it, and then you set your view depth for anything you want to see with the beyond line style to continue. Okay, that can be again level above given an offset, associated level, give it an offset, or unlimited. I tend to leave this as unlimited. Looking at our diagram on the left hand side that we want to emulate, you can see that we have our bottom and our cut plane, which is the same thing in the reflected ceiling plan, set to 1500. And what we actually want is to reflect here in our view range settings in the plan. So I'm going to change that to 1500. And what I want you to note is, because it was currently at 2300, we were not seeing the windows and we were not seeing the doors. Okay, so we were not seeing this door over here, we were not seeing this door here, and we were not seeing the window down here. By putting it into the 1500, we're crossing the cut plane, and what we should do is see our windows and our doors with their default cut line representations according to their element categories. So when I press apply here, you can see that our doors have appeared, our window has appeared, and our doors have appeared as well. And press OK. So that is how to understand how the view range settings are utilized in the reflected ceiling plan and how to implement them as you need them. Step 4. Applying view ranges to Revit view templates. So on the left hand side we have our standard example plan that we've been working through, where we can clearly see our doors cutting, our windows cutting, that kind of thing without issue. If you look on the right hand side, I have a copy of that plan, but you actually can't illustrate any of these items, and the reason for it is that the view ranges between the views are different. On the left hand side, when I go into the view range properties, you can see that my top of the view range is 2500 and my cut plane is 1500, okay? And my view depth is minus 750. So there's already a view range settings exercise that's being undertaken to present the example plan on the left the way we want it. But what we want to do is emulate this on the right hand side, and we don't necessarily want to have to go through the process every time of going into our view range and editing the particulars for each and every view that we create, because you could have potentially dozens of call out views and that kind of thing that you want to present in a similar fashion. So what we want to do is we want to take our view range and apply it to a view template. So going on the left hand side, on the underside here in the identity data, you can see that view template, we have something shown as none. Okay, if we go up to the view tab in the ribbon, on view templates, on the drop down, we can say create template from current view. And here I'm going to say plan view confirmed view range settings. Okay, I'm going to press OK. So what this does is this brings up the visibility graphics dialog essentially for the entire view setting. So all the view setting controls are suddenly visible in this dialog here, and you can see that we've now created a new template, a view template, among the view templates. When you scroll up and down, there's many settings here that we can change, but the one I want to show you is that the view range is set as include. Okay, so I'm going to turn off that for the moment just to show you something. Okay, so when I press OK and that's off, I've created a new view template of all the visual styles, the view range settings, that kind of thing that control the presentation on the left hand side. And over here I'm going to assign that same view template. So selecting this, I'm going to go down to our identity data and select plan view confirmed view range settings. Okay, and I'm going to press apply. Now you'll notice that nothing changed there. Absolutely nothing changed, because the views were identical with the exception of the view range properties. So what we need to do is in our view templates, going down to manage view templates, I want to select plan view confirm view range settings that we created, and I want to make sure the view range is active. I'm going to press OK, press OK, and you will see the right hand side is updated to now show the exact same view range settings as the left hand side. So that is how to use view ranges in conjunction with view templates to quickly change the presentation and the cut plane of multiple views. The one reason that generally you would not want to do this is if you have a standard plan visual output that you want to apply to multiple levels, then in your view template, having that assigned as off It means that you don't, let's say, try to replicate your ground floor presentation standards to your first floor, where the elements you want to present are likely at different levels. So that is the one reason on a view template you wouldn't have the view range active, but the majority of the time you could probably leave it active for exercises such as this. So that concludes number 4. Step 5, using plan regions alongside view ranges. So in our sample here, we've maintained the original settings that we set up in step 2, okay? And what I want to do is locally change the presentation of the view range for just one element specifically. So we have our cut plane here set at 1500, okay? So when I go into our view range, you can see our cut plane is set to 1500 mil here, okay? And what I want to do is actually, I don't want that window to be that high. Let's say I want this window to be down here instead, so that the people in the bath have a good view out the window, all right? As you can see, the presentation is not correct here now. We still want to see the window from the architectural perspective presented, but we also want to show our doors cut correctly and all the miscellaneous items cut at the 1500 level. So how do we show the window correctly cut in isolation if it's not crossing the cut plane? So because it doesn't intersect the cut plane, it's not showing as an intersected element anymore, and we want to show it as an intersected element so that the contractor can come along and actually place the window correctly and doesn't miss the window in this location. So what we can do is when we go into our view tab, we can go to plan views, and below that we have something called plan region. When we select plan region, it gives us a little draw dialog, and what we can do is we can draw any miscellaneous shape we wish, but in this instance we're just going to draw a small rectangle from here to here, and I'm going to press OK. Now you will notice that we have this little dash element here now that represents our plan region, but the plan region itself needs the properties to be assigned to it. So as a default, it takes the default view range settings for the view, but you can see there's an independent view range setting for the plan region. And here I can go down here and I can change the cut plane for this area only from 1500, which is the default, down to, let's say, 1000. Press apply, and now you can see our window is the standard cut presentation that's required just in that location. Please note that the plan regions won't print or anything like that. It's just a reference in the model environment, so you don't need to go ahead and clean up the view for the plan regions or anything afterwards. And now we can present it even though it's not necessarily at the same height as the cut plane and all the other elements that are being shown. So that's how to use your plan regions in conjunction with your view ranges to isolate elements to show them correctly cut where you need them. This is particularly effective when you have split level floor plans, a mezzanine level, that kind of thing, and you can just take the mezzanine or the couplet risers and the top section as a plan region and increase the cut plane there. So guys, that about concludes this video. I hope you found it useful. If you have any questions, as ever, please make sure to drop them in the comment section below. I'll be happy to answer them where I can. Also head over to 8020bim.com, where I'll have a step-by-step guide in kind of a linear written format that you can follow if that is your preferred format. As ever, I appreciate your attention and taking the time to watch this. Like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you for the next one. Thanks a million, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.